Hi, guys. This is David Cruz of the Optimum Advantage podcast, and I'm here with Matthew Missimer. He's actually the CEO and co-founder of Motion of Gratitude. It's an integrative well-being company that's focused on helping individuals, families, schools, organizations, veterans. I'm not going to get too much into it. I'm going to let him speak on it. So, Matthew, you could tell us a little bit about that. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's a pleasure. So, can you tell us a little bit about your company, kind of like what started it?
Sure. Yeah. So the Motion of Gratitude, it actually all started out of personal needs. So I was in finance for 20 years. And, the Motion of Gratitude originally started out as more of a hobby, I would say. And it was really my wife's personal journey of motherhood. And in 2017, we had the birth of our second child. And, at the time I was working with all these coaches and building my financial company, and my wife really pulled up using gratitude and meditation. And that really rewrote the story of our life. And now it's been 8 years of dedicating our life to teaching people the power of gratitude and
Wow.
meditation. And it's been really, really fun journey.
Oh, that's so interesting, man. To go from finance to kind of change your whole life into it must have been impactful.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I started in finance when I was 19, right? So it's very much left brain, 1+1=2 type of work, right?
Yeah, my sister's in that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so now the work I do is completely right brain and very creative, and also problem solving from a place of emotional connection versus, crossing your T's and dotting your I's.
Cool. So as far as like your company, I know you're the co-founder. Um, what's like the main goal of the company per se? Like say if I was a client per se, like how would you guys go about like doing that?
Yeah, so our number one goal is to teach people the power of rewiring the prefrontal cortex. So we made up a word, gratosis, the process, state, or condition of gratitude. So our big dream on this planet is to have the first positive diagnosis in the world, which is a paradox to create a pause. It's the understanding that when you rewire your prefrontal cortex to focus on what's going right versus what's going wrong, or the world's happening for me and not to me, you rewrite the entire story of your life. And our goal, I mean, I can hook you up to a brain scan and show you how that's working. But it's like ketosis. Like, you don't need to do blood work to know if you're in ketosis, because you feel the power of your body working in ketosis. And that's why our tagline is feel the impact. It's feeling the impact of having an intentional gratitude practice in your life, and rewiring your prefrontal cortex.
That's so crazy too, because I've actually had personal experience with this where like once you have that mindset shift, it's like everything kind of like happens to you instead of like against you. And it literally like your life starts to change in incredible ways. And I mean, I can't even imagine how fulfilling that must have been for you guys to switch from like that type of career to something where you're like helping people on that level. Like that must be crazy, like I've had companies that I've done where I've kind of focused on that, and I can't tell you how rewarding that is. Like, was it hard in the beginning, like switching from the finance to like getting over to that financially, or because I know you said it started as a hobby?
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, financial planning, I was a personal financial planner. So at the core of what I did was help people to see the best versions of themselves, what's their goals and visions for their life, and then to develop a strategy using money to help them to achieve that. So I've always been of the mindset of doing good and helping people to achieve things. Um, but then I was put into a box, right? Which is like, what's your ROI? What's my financial plan? And what we truly do now is our definition of success is people truly living out what is their definition of kurtosis. Like, how do they get reconnected from their head back into their heart, and then move into action based on their alignment for what they see fit for themselves? So, I mean, yes, it was a giant shift. I would say more on the business side versus the philosophy side. Um, Monetizing and creating a company built on selling what, you could say possibility or potential. It's very hard.
Yeah.
The financial planning industry is built on um, helping people understand what they're scared of, and then creating a strategy to mitigate fear. That's a much easier strategy to sell into.
Yeah, because I mean, it's people just normally just hate change, you know? So to try to like, I guess combat that, it's one of the most rewarding things, but I can imagine it's a little bit challenging at times. No?
Yeah, and honestly, people actually really love change. If we're being honest, they just don't like the transitions. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
like when you think about like your goals and dreams, like it's easy to, not easy for everyone, but easy for a lot to be like, this is what I want for my life. It's really the how is where people get stuck.
Right. So what is your program like? What kind of things do you guys do in order to help that transition?
Yeah, so it's a 28-day program. Well, one of them, we have um, a couple of ways that we integrate into companies or schools and helping children, teachers, in corporate culture consulting. But we have a 90-day program, which is like a 30-day on ramp on what's the philosophy, how do you kind of create the buy-in around our process. Then the next 30 days is a program, which is delivered in an app. And then you have a physical product because people need physical products. So we have bracelets, a beautiful journal, everything's made in America. So it's, you're getting this beautiful box. And then the next 30 days is the off ramp, the integration, and then the application of whether we're working in a company, how do you create common language for what we're discussing? If you're working in a school, if you're working with parents and teachers, or teachers and children, or parents and children, what's the common language that we're creating to help people understand what it truly means to live from a place of gratitude, which is it's not an easy feat for a lot of people.
Yeah. No, I was actually a personal trainer for a while, and that's really one of the things people get hung up on the most. Is just like changing the attitude of like, oh, I have to come to the gym to like, and it's something profound. I think that's kind of deep. That when you really start working on it, it's more than just like a motivation thing. Because like after a while, you kind of like run out of like energy. You know what I mean? Where you're just like pushing through. So like I kind of get what you're saying. Um, the only thing that I'm curious about is like, you say is it kind of custom how you do with like teachers as opposed to kids? Like where like I'd imagine it's a little bit different, kind of teaching each one. Is every one of those things custom that you do?
So there's a very predictable arc.
Okay.
The timeline is unpredictable. The trajectory is predictable. Um, but culture is unique, right? So like we work all over the country. So like if we're working at a school in Wisconsin versus a school I live outside Philadelphia, versus a school in Philadelphia, and we have children coming from different social economic situations, we have to teach that like gratitude is not some hashtag blessed conversation. Like gratitude is a survival skill. It's not a soft skill. So how do we frame the language so that people from different cultural backgrounds don't think that I don't really love the phrase, but say gaslighting them into thinking that like you just have to be positive and grateful. Like that's not what we're teaching.
So how do you go about that more like just showing like the benefits of it, or is there actually like I don't know, like some sort of exercising or like what does it entail really?
Yeah, so gratitude's a felt experience. So like we all conceptually understand gratitude, right? Like I should be grateful for. Um, and our parents teach us that, and there's many lines growing up where there's kids starving, and like we all have heard
Yeah.
these things, right? That's not what we're teaching, and we're teaching the felt experience. So and it depends on the arc, but it's pretty predictable. Around 2 weeks into our program, people start to feel different. And that's really the neuroplasticity being rewired. There's a deep part of the intermedial prefrontal lobe that's starting to get activated, which then changes the frontal lobe. So they're starting to feel different, which is then they're operating from their heart. And it's very counterintuitive because they're like, well, I'm changing the brain, but I'm feeling it in my heart. So what we're doing is just teaching people how to feel into feelings, which is very different than what we've been coached to do, particularly as men, right? The men were like, don't feel your feelings, like suck it up, and
I could
then put
attest
it
to that.
down and don't worry about that. Put it on a shelf and you can address that later, which most men address like in their 60s or prior to leaving this planet. We're teaching people how to feel into those experiences, bring the feelings up and out to the surface. And it happens on purpose by accident for most, because they start to feel different because of the trajectory and the arc. But when it's actually happening in real time, then that's where they need to know that they're not alone on the journey. Like,
Mm.
we are walking with you through this. So although what we're teaching you, you can do anywhere, anytime, you're not by yourself in learning these tools. So it's pretty cool. So essentially what we're doing is teaching people to remember that you are indeed the problem and you are indeed the solution. And how do we just help you to embrace that and to anchor that into your reality? And once they get it, then it's just, people will wake up some days and they'll forget to gratitude journal, or they'll forget to embrace the gratitude. And they're like, oh, I feel different. It's like, yeah, do that 5 days in a row. And now we have to rewrite the story again.
Starting from that different point.
Correct. So
That's-
discipline is so important, but it's because, this is so simple to do, and therefore it's simple not to do. And what we're teaching people is the power of gratitude and the breath, right? So like, we all carry around our breath, and we tend to take that for granted until you take your last. What we're teaching people is, if you take intentional breaths each day, um, you will rewrite the story, and then you're locking in that neuroplasticity by using breath, meditation, and then gratitude.
oh wow. Yeah, it sounds you guys like you really did like deep kind of research into this, where it's like it's very intricate to because breath like you said something really interesting about like the breath kind of locking in that mindset, I guess, like of when you're doing that. And have you ever heard about Wim Hoffman or anything
Mhm.
like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to do those kind of some of these breathing techniques are really incredible, man. I mean, so it's just interesting that you mix that with the two, because it
Yeah.
makes, and you don't think about it, but it makes sense, when you start looking into it.
Yeah. When you
Um,
think about like philosophy, like, we live here in the West, right? So medicine has become science, and then science has become a religion. It's very interesting. When you think of Eastern philosophy, you have this very open architecture that is predating any form of medicine by thousands and thousands of years. Now, I am truly blessed to live in 2026. I have 3 children. We've had plenty of events at ERs and stitches, and I'm so grateful that we have modern medicine to solve um, injuries and things like that. But what we've truly left behind, which we're trying to integrate back into the philosophy, is Eastern philosophy, which is, you heal your mind and then your body. And disease and inflammation in your body is disconnection. And those words, language, is so critical to understand. So if you're getting sick and you have inflammatory disease in your body, there might be a spiritual gap that you have to address before you address the physical gap.
yeah, and it's so crazy because I think you had a really important point. That it really isn't. They don't really hit that in modern medicine. Like you're right. Like there's a lot of new things coming out, innovation. But as far as like I've had a lot of people I know close to me deal with mental health issues, and as incredible as some of that stuff is, like people dealing with bipolar, some of the medicine is great. But like when you go into these psych centers or whatever, there's a lot of things that are left unspoken about or untreated just because of like I guess the depth you have to go into to speak about. It's very personal,
Mhm.
and I just don't think that like modern there's a very big gap, I guess, in medicine that does not affect that. So it's cool to see you addressing it in that way. Even those civilizations you mentioned, like they didn't have medicine, so I'm sure that over thousands of years you kind of hyper focus on something like that. There's got to be a wealth of knowledge there that we're not tapping into. So,
Yeah.
um,
And it's critical to remember, like, before pharmacies and pharmaceutical companies existed, the way they created their products was through nature, because we've always had medicine. We've just got it from plants. And then you can't patent a plant, so then you have to modify it. So that's just, like, we've been truly blessed with an ecosystem on planet Earth where if you are sick, there's something on this planet that will counterbalance the sickness. But if you catch it too late, then that's a different issue.
Yeah, and it's cool. I mean, I don't know how into this stuff you are, but I know like as far as like certain civilizations, kind of like where I come from, there's shamans in South America where they'll do special rituals with plants like ayahuasca and things like that to really treat like spiritual issues you may be having in depth.
Hmm.
And obviously there's no it's kind of hard to just, do something like that, but there are other ways I've seen. I've personally seen, um, like the effects of not dealing with that at all, or like not dealing in that world.
Yeah.
So, it's cool that to see you doing that. Like, how did you and your wife get into that?
Well, funny you say. So I was deeply in my own health journey with high blood pressure, and I was managing a lot of money, and I couldn't pull up. I had actually been researching ayahuasca for about 5 years, and in 23, I flew to Costa Rica and did ayahuasca. And it was literally, I'm very public about it because I wrote in my book, my journal notes are in my book. So I don't hide from how I got to my current state of awareness.
That's so
Um,
awesome.
but ayahuasca is just this beautiful medicine that comes from a vine mixed with a flower. And just the fact that the shamans figured it out, right? Because you've got 252,000 plants in the Amazon. I'm a math guy, so to figure out that you mix these two together to create this magical tool. But that was part of the journey, and just for me, like you go, and I don't recommend anyone to do plant medicine. It's a very personal journey. I just am grateful that I figured it out because I didn't grow up in Central or South America. Like I grew up in America, like in the North America. Like so, but we've fallen in love with the culture of Costa Rica. We lived there for a while, the five of us, and um,
That's
I think
beautiful over there.
I think there's just these beautiful traditions of the West, whether it's in the other side of the world, or in Central or South America, that we have to integrate back into humanity in a beautiful way. And as we move into this time and space where, we've got quantum computing and AI, and, you know, 18 months from now, like the only thing that's going to matter is if you know how to be human.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then you think about the job market and I think there's only going to be three jobs. You're either going to create energy, you're going to heal people and help them heal, or you're going to take care of people's stuff.
yeah. No, I totally agree with that, especially because like as you kind of delve deeper into like what AI can do, like it's gonna all the like superficial things we need to do is gonna get easier and easier, and then you're left without distractions, almost without struggles, and then it's just like your inner self,
Yeah.
So it's gonna be, I'm assuming, hard for some people, but I think ultimately, like if there's the knowledge, like how you were able to find and programs like yours, it's I'm hopeful for the future,
Me too.
just
I'm
yeah.
so optimistic, and I think there's what other way to be in life than to be optimistic, and not from like a naive place, right? Like from a very grounded place of like, without hope, what else do we have? Um, so I'm very optimistic for the future, and I also am very aware that when humans are bored, they do dumb stuff. So what we have to do is to help humans be very comfortable in the quiet of their minds. And like, I'm 40, so like when I came up in the professional world, Simon Sinek was coming on the scene, so he was just so popular, right? And he was the why guy back then. Now he's so much more than that, but that's what he was kind of known for. But like it was basically back then, like the attention span was around 21 minutes. So his whole thing was, if you find your why, you find your way, and I deeply resonate with that. But fast forward to 2026, the average attention span in this country right now is 7 to 48 seconds. So if you don't know how to get quiet, there's no way you can hear that inner voice to know what your why is going to be. So for the next foreseeable future, I think our job is actually going to be helping people to regulate their nervous systems to downshift from the intensity and the pace and the cadence of the technology.
Yeah, I think you're so on point with that, man. Because I mean, with things like TikTok and even the way that society's been, like, as I've my sister's 10 years younger than me, so I was privileged to kind of see like the younger kids. And you know, a lot of a lot of the kids, just for whatever reason, like the family structure is not as tight anymore. So like I think you end up getting a lot of like central deregulation to your nervous system through that, through socioeconomic reasons, and then you know everything else that like makes it happen, like TikTok and Instagram and all these things that flood your dopamine systems. And that's kind of why I got into training myself, because it's like, you know, you see, um, you know, I say I'm fortunate enough to have had kind of like a little bit of a rough childhood, because now I've been able to kind of see what it's like to live with lacking certain things. And so like I could kind of see inside other people, like, like the need or how important that is, even in just society, you know, just to help people out. And 'cause nothing brings fulfillment like, you know, this type of work, man. It really doesn't. Like, this level of connection and stuff, it's super important, man. And I think it's really cool that you were able to kinda make this, like, your career, like, your job. Basically, like, that's the dream, you know, to be able to make that, like, work, and especially on a large scale too. I mean, are you digital, or are you, like, um
Yeah, so we do multiple things. Like we work in three different verticals. One is corporate, which is more, if you think of like chief people officers and or the experience officers that are coming out of the scene. So we do that more in a fractional way, because a lot of these companies can't afford someone like that to be working full time at their companies. We love helping small businesses. So in the corporate space, we're very hands on, and we have a set trajectory of how we help them, both through digital, through workbooks, through the breathing room, which is teaching people different breathwork practices to handle performance versus nervous system regulation. So there's a lot there. With kids, we use workbooks. I mean, the last thing we want to do is teach kids
Oh,
how to
wow.
manage their nervous systems using technology. Uh,
Yeah.
that would be quite the paradox. So, um, like we want to teach kids that, how to quiet the mind, and they actually are really, really good at it. They're the easiest clients. Um, the adults actually don't know, like no one really taught their caregivers how to do it. So you might
Mm,
have a ton of teachers right now who the level of awareness we have, both education and just access to information, and just how these different cultures of humans are moving around. Like, I'll just use a really practical example. Like, I live in the suburbs. Let's say a child that lives in the inner city of Philadelphia moves to this suburb. And they're doing that because they're getting access to better schools. Well, that child's bringing in a different intensity of life potentially. The school
mm,
teacher that grew up here doesn't know how to hold space for that child because they never lived it, right? So now you've got this interesting clash of culture, but what gratitude does is it creates empathy. So like the teacher doesn't have to solve the problem. All they have to
mm.
do is be able to hold it with them and to walk together and to just see the child for who they are and not try to fix it or judge. So what we're doing is creating an ecosystem of co-regulations between parents and kids, or teachers and children, or in the corporate boardroom, the executive team and all the workers. We all work in a collective, and we have different collective consciousness. Some is, it's like I've got three kids and a dog. So like that's one collective consciousness of my life. Then I've got the company, then I've got different consulting roles. So each one of those separate collective consciousness has a different set of rules and guidelines. So we're not trying to create the rules. We're trying to teach people that empathy will allow us all to walk together in those rules.
Wow, that's so interesting, man. Yeah, I just see like a lot of I live in New Jersey, you know, and this is kind of it tends to be a fast-paced environment, you know, because we're so close to New York City. And so like sometimes people here can be I'm sure it's a little bit like Philadelphia, you know, where sometimes people can be like, you know, a little rough, and they're like, "Hey, yo, what's up?" You know, it's like a quick fast-paced environment, and a lot of the times like people grow up, a lot of those parents didn't have those tools like you said that we have today, of even knowing how to hold space. So you grew up with this whole culture of just like, you know, like I don't know how to put it, but like not really like holding space, you know. If there's any time some sort of like uncomfortable silence, it's like you learn how to be quick on your feet and you're like, oh yeah, like whatever, you know. And you don't, I personally had to learn that myself as I got older, to just be okay with silence and okay with different situations and people and things. And um that's something I think is so crucial, even just as like a culture, for us to know, like parents just in general, because it's like, as you were saying it, I'm like thinking about it. It's something that like it's almost should be in like parent handbooks, you know, like because people like, you know, sometimes that you don't know how to deal with your kids for so long, but that's such an important thing that I was like grateful enough to have been taught by my mom, is that aspect of it. And it creates these situations that almost would never happen anywhere else, you know. Like people tend to like open up to me a lot just from, you know, being like comfortable with me and talking and stuff. And
Mm.
it's so cool that you were able to put it into like practice of like actually like teaching people, you know, because I've personal training, I've done mindset training, but just that specific, I never thought about that specific part of it, you know.
Mm.
It's
Yeah, I
super
mean, and it's so important that people have a road to run on. Like it's, and they like people don't need to be told what to do, but they love to be told how to do something. And then we tend to be instant gratification as humans. So if you're not getting quick results, you give up. So our hardest part about our program is we don't really see results in the humans for about 2 weeks. So it's just so critical. It's like exercising, right? The first week, you're like, oh my gosh, every bone in my body hurts. Like, why am I doing this? Um, and then of course with exercise, there's that phase where you put on weight before you lose weight, and then you look in
Yep.
the mirror and you're all mad. Um, that's how our program works too. It's like you start to get it, but it doesn't click. And then it clicks and you're like, "Oh, wow." And then you start to shift. So like if you got a flat tire today, for example, driving home, and that might have spun you out in the past, but now you got that flat tire and you're like, "Oh man, maybe that's saving me from getting a car accident."
Yeah.
And all you're doing is reframing a thought, right? And 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 no one is smarter than, like, I just see when it comes to success, the people that reframe the fastest and bounce back the most and fail the most, um, they tend to be more successful in all facets of life.
Yeah, yeah. Letting go of that fear from just that repetition of like just failing, but with that good perspective. That's what something that a lot of people don't talk about. It's like they're like, oh, it's okay to fail, blah, blah, blah. But it's like if you just keep failing with a negative perspective, like you're done. You know, it's almost reinforcing the opposite. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, that's something you don't hear often. That's
Yeah.
that's
That
pretty.
the more I fail, the more excited I get. I mean, I grew up in finance, so, like in the financial services industry, it's just like baseball. So if you hit out 1 out of every 3 pitches, you go to the Hall of Fame. Like in finance, like I used to make phone calls every day and get rejected all day long. And if I got 1 client out of every 3 people I met, like life was good. But it took me getting rejected at least 15 times to get there.
Yeah, that numbers game, man. It's kind of like business too, you know. Just you have to put it out there, but it's that positive mindset, man, is something I really just I never like saw it like in that. You don't think about it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You know, like it's in the back of your mind. I think I have the mindset that you're talking about, where like I've recently I've been able to do things like um with like any time that fails, I'll say like it failed because I happened. Then you go into that whole mindset of like, oh, this happened because this was meant to happen, and then something else happened that was good, and I wouldn't be in the position I am today. So like that happens enough, and you get but you don't. It's not something you think about, and you're like your prefrontal, where you're just like it's to the front of your mind. It's more subconscious. You know what I
Right.
mean?
And like the reality is your brain cannot distinguish between a real threat and a perceived threat. So if you're constantly operating from the back part of your brain, you cannot physically lock into that part of your brain because fight, flight, freeze, or fawn is running your show. So what we're teaching people to do is to intentionally on purpose get out of fight or flight. And then like this used to be trained behind closed doors and professional athletes and high performers, like the jig's up. Like You don't need to spend thousands of dollars to learn how to breathe on purpose. Our program is designed to be like a night out to dinner, so that like, okay, it's approachable, I can afford it, and then once I learn this over the next 28 days, I can integrate it forever into my life.
Yeah, man. And it's one of the things, the most important things you could do is self-investment, man.
Yep.
And just out of curiosity, even for the listeners, do you work with people like individually? Is there individual programs, or is it just like how you said the companies where you do groups and schools and stuff like that?
Hold on one second. My dog's unhappy, so I asked my wife to come get him. So,
No
yeah,
problem.
so we love helping individuals. So, like, we have like it's super simple. Like on our website, you can check it out. But like, yeah, like you literally go on there. You can purchase our individual product. It gets delivered to your house. It's a beautiful journal and the bracelets, and then you download an app, and then it begins the journey. But you're not, like I said, you're not doing it alone. So, like right now, there's so many programs that people buy in our country, and like there's a chat bot behind the scenes, or you never get access to the creators or the founders. Shannon and I monitor that app all day. So as people are going through the healing journey, if they need support and they send a message, like they're getting us.
Oh, wow. It's
And
very personalized.
it's very personalized because people can't start journeys like this and get into situations where they might not get well, they might get stuck.
Hmm.
And the last thing you want to do with people is to teach them how to tap into higher states of consciousness alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so we like helping individuals, but we want them to know that as they're going through the program, if they get stuck or if something comes up and they don't know how to integrate it or plan through it, we're right there for them. Now we have parameters. We sleep at night and things like that. So, uh,
Uh, you you don't work 24/7?
no, I love my sleep.
Yes. Yeah, it's, AI is good for a lot of things, man, but, when you're talking about, like, this stuff like you said, man, it's very delicate, I think, too, things like this, people start to become vulnerable and stuff, and I think with the type of work you do, it's very, you kinda have, like, a little bit of a responsibility, right, with that different, thing where it's just, like, you don't wanna let somebody down, and it's, like, especially when they're opening up. I'm sure you deal too with I'm sure, are guys a little bit harder?
For sure. So yeah, so
Yeah.
we help veterans, right? So, like what we're deconstructing inside the veteran's mind is what they were trained not to do,
Wow.
right? So in order
Talk
to
about a hard job.
fight for our country or any country, um, you have to be wired and fired to compartmentalize, right? And to take on a commitment. And when our brothers in arms come out of those commitments, it's a hard left turn. So they might be fighting for our country in some, you know, dirt road town and somewhere in the world. And then they come back to America and they're supposed to like go to Starbucks and get a latte for $5. Like it doesn't make sense to their brains, nor should it ever. Um, Particularly if they've seen things that they can't unsee. So
Man,
what we're doing is teaching them that feelings are cool. Like there's nothing wrong with having feelings. One of the most miraculous things about being human is having feelings. We remember when we cry. We remember when we get goosebumps. We remember these moments because they're the highest state of consciousness. So if you're no longer having to compartmentalize and fight for that, then let's bring those things up and out to the surface so you can get clean and clear. And, PTSD and all of these things, we get stuck in the past or stuck in the future, but where all the magic happens is in the present moment. But a lot of humans don't know how to do that, and we want to help them to learn to do that.
I, uh, I definitely commend you for that, man, because I have a friend that, he was a Brooklyn detective for 10, 15 years, and, he also he served actually before that, a little bit older, but, um he just went through some of the most horrific things I think I've ever, even just listening to some of these stories, it's like it's unbelievable, like carrying parts of his dead friends back, and then uh, I guess when he worked in New York, it was like, uh, the 90s, like, is a real bad time. And so the things that he ended up seeing over there, like, one of the best guys I know. I mean, literally one of the most kindest, most, uh, one of my best friends, really. And he just, like, in trying to cope with a lot of these issues, he ended up developing alcoholism. And all of his friends, I'm talking about, like, they did 9/11, the cleanup, and out of the friends that he either served with or was there that day, I he's at like 112 of his friends that have passed away so far from suicide. And so this is a serious, like, topic that, like, and those guys are so great. Like, they're so, like, the best guys you could ever imagine. So it's hard to see somebody go through something like that, man. And it's just, it kind of puts it into perspective too, a little bit of, like, why something like this is so important, even on the small scale, like, um because, I mean, it was, especially with right now, we don't have an excuse. I mean, you got people like you out there. There's the internet. There's the retreat, like you mentioned, in Costa Rica. There's just, like, so many things that you could do, that it's just like, there's a lot of resources out there, and I think it's super important, man.
And thank you for sharing about your brother.
You know,
What I think, so I'm not a veteran, but I think so deeply about our brothers and sisters who take an oath to defend and protect this country. And so much in the news you hear about our special force people, and, like, phew, intense, right? And thank you for all of them, for all of the intensity that they go into. Where we really like showing up is the people that have served for 4 to 6 years. They're coming back into our culture as 24, 25, 26 year olds.
oh my God.
And what better human would we want to integrate into helping our society than someone who agreed to give their life for us? These people need extra support, because once we get them through the integration back into society, these are our police officers, these are our first responders. They're also the people that would coach our kids on baseball fields and soccer fields. Like, these are the people that have huge hearts, but their hearts have been closed because they've seen bad stuff. We want to open them back up, help people to feel safe, to purge and get rid of all that stuff, and then welcome them back into our society, which is true of a lot of stuff, right? I mean, it's true of our prison system. I mean, so many people who go to jail in their late teens. Um, your prefrontal cortex as a man doesn't develop fully until you're 30. And I know I did a lot of dumb stuff when I was young.
Me too.
And I just believe that second chances are so critical, both based on my spiritual belief systems, but also being an American. Like, this country was built on second chances. So I think we're coming into a time and space where the more conversations we have like this, whether there's one or six or 1,000 people that hear this conversation, if it sparks just one more human to be like, oh, we can talk about that stuff, then you and I did our job today.
Oh, absolutely, man. And then that was the goal. I think I was always trying to reach people, is, like, by putting my own personal, I guess, shortcomings or whatever out there, just kind of letting it know that it's okay. Just, you grow up as a man, especially in America and Jersey, so it's like, how it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a little bit like you said, like you mentioned, like, you can't till you're 62. It's like you're, like, holding that laugh from that puppy from, like, 92.
Right,
So
right. And it's like, hey, I think it's cool. Like, I've lived in different parts of this country. Like, during COVID, we bought an RV and traveled all over America, the five of us. And the cool thing about living in America is each state truly has its own culture. And you see a lot of different ways. And west of the Mississippi and south of the Mason-Dixon line, it's a different country. And but one thing, we lived in Utah for a little while, and one thing that was really cool about Utah is men got together consistently to hang out and talk about this stuff.
Wow.
Here in the Northeast, it's kind of like, feelings, you want to get a beer, right? And then that's
Yeah.
how we just set all that stuff to the side. But I think what's happening now is you're even seeing alcohol consumption going down, and you're seeing all this cool trend if you're paying attention to the good. If
Mm.
you pay attention to the bad, you're only going to see the bad. But I believe in 2026, we're so lucky to be alive. The amount of humans that are eating compared to 50 years ago, the amount of awareness, education, and access to information we have, it's incredible.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, definitely by far the easiest and best time to be alive, like, without a doubt. And it's good that, you got people like you promoting that because if you turn on the news, it's like, it's the worst time ever,
Yeah.
and that's what's being bombarded at everybody. So that's super cool. And that thing you mentioned about like those guys getting together, like, in what context is that?
They would just like I could go to a group almost every night of the week if I wanted to, where it would just be like men going for hikes or, meeting up to go for bike rides. And, it's interesting because I'm not Mormon, but it's the Mormon culture. So the Mormons don't drink. So the men
Mm,
get really creative on how they have fun. And I think that's really cool. So, like, we would go hiking, we would go surfing on wakeboards up in the reservoir because, like, you need to feed that part of your adrenaline, but you're not doing it in a way that's a substance. So then life has to become very fun because we all have the same dopamine chase. Um,
no,
so,
absolutely.
how are you going to chase that dopamine? I think is really important to think about as you're on this journey of life, because we're either avoiding pain or seeking reward. Like there's nothing really in the middle. So how are you doing that? So men
Yeah,
were
yeah.
just good at doing that together in fun containers.
It's cool, man, because, that as far as it's basically you're being a kid again, you know? You
Yep.
get to, like, just, like, do all the stuff that when I was getting I think sometimes you get caught up with, like, just even economically, you know what I mean? I
Yep.
remember when I was younger, I didn't have time to do anything except just, make it. So it's
Yeah, just
like
get by. And like, it's such a paradox because as you get older, you think you're supposed to be more serious and blah. Um, But it's actually the opposite. I mean, at least for me, the older I get, the more fun I have. But I went through a phase of life where it was very serious, and I think that's normal. Like you're having little kids. My kids are 10, 8, and 6 now. So you're coming out on the other
Right.
side of like very intense. And I just feel the playfulness coming back in our lives. But what we have to do as men and women, of course, but that season of life where you're having little kids and it's really intense and people aren't sleeping and sometimes in our culture right now it's like when things get hard you just stop, and we know when things get hard you double down. But that's so much easier said than done because in relationships like we want to turn towards each other in those hard seasons, which is why divorce rates in our country are over 50% because they tend to fracture in those really hard seasons. And I want to help people to have more awareness about what is the heart all about and how do you weather that hard together. And so you come out the other side and then have fun again. Because then you did all the work. You worked so hard to come out the other side and you will have more fun.
No, absolutely. And you touched on a really critical point too, is just that the divorce rate is like the relationships now are just totally crazy. I mean, especially me coming from like a different culture, like and over here it's like I guess at my age more than anything, it's just like relationships tend to be very uh easily broken. I think it's because everything's fast paced with dopamine and stuff, and I think the culture a little bit. But yeah, getting back to that, what you're doing as far as like getting that mindset, I think that's all kind of included and integrated.
Yeah. And gratitude, like I obsess about gratitude because when you're grateful for the hard seasons, you exercise a muscle. It's kinda like I love yoga, and I have little kids, so we play a lot. So, the amount of yoga that I do is creating a strong body so that when I'm playing with my kids, I don't get hurt.
Hmm.
Like, the unintended consequence of me loving myself in the heart of doing Bikram yoga prepares me to have fun in the easy and then keep having fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's one of the best things. I'm definitely a proponent of that. As far as like my personal background is just that, especially as I'm getting older now, it's just like that's crucial to like I think even your mental health. So it's cool that is that included in your program or
No, we don't. Not yoga, but we're teaching people like, um, through time, understanding how powerful physical movement is. Like it's just, but that's integrated in all walks of. Like it's harder here. It's the Northeast. It's cold. It's an intense time of year to live in New Jersey or Pennsylvania. So it's like finding tools like red light therapy and doing things that we have access to, but it's like health is about movement and walking, and you don't have to go from 0 to 100. Like there's many steps in between, literally and figuratively. So yeah, we want to teach people just that self-love. But what's cool about mental wealth, I don't call it mental health because then we get down stigmas. But when we're talking about mental wealth, the more you love yourself, the more you will exercise.
yeah, it's like
So
a natural byproduct. Yeah,
correct. So now a lot of people think, okay, I got to go exercise so that I love myself. And that order of reasoning tends to fail.
yeah. This is you're just going on pure willpower, and that always runs out.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah. But when you go on self-love and alignment and you pick an outcome that means so much to you, like if you're 60 and you pick a desire to be there for your great grandchildren, that thing is so much bigger than you that's what's going to keep you going in those hard seasons.
yeah, that purpose, man.
Yeah.
Think 'cause some people don't really find that till they get a little bit older. It comes with maturity, all that stuff, but that's I try to tell people that I was, coaching too, it's like that why is so much more important than like and sometimes it starts off superficial, but like as you keep going, you just that's what does keep you going.
Mm.
Is
Yeah.
that important thing, man. But listen, Matthew, I appreciate you, man. This is I think is an incredible program. I think it's absolutely incredible what you're doing, and especially the type of people you're helping, like veterans, even just everyday people. So, um, you want to let the people know kind of like where to find you, where to reach you if you're online.
Sure. Yeah, our whole life is the motion of gratitude. So, um, whether it's Instagram or LinkedIn, or just if you search the motion of gratitude, my book is called The Paradox of Having Your Shit Together. So, if you're looking for an even more easy way, just check out Amazon and search the book. It's a fun, playful read of the spiritual journey, including the middle path, which is my notes from my ceremony. So, it's a very vulnerable book, particularly for men.
Cool, man. Thank you. I really appreciate you coming on, man. It's been
Well,
a pleasure to have you, and thanks again, brother.
you're welcome.